Hello, you. We're listening to Merry Moments at Trent Radio, Canada. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Kate Sharpe from Scotland, an archaeologist and expert in prehistoric rock art, particularly in Scotland's ancient petroglyphs. So today we're going to hear all about her book, A Song in Stone. Isn't that a cool title? So welcome, Dr. Sharpe. And please, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Sharpe?
I will, of course, yes. I'm actually attached to Durham University at the moment, which is in England, in the northeast of England. So, although I think the book that you I've been looking at is about Scottish rock art, my work is really all over the north of Britain. Um, so I didn't start off as an archaeologist, though. I started off as a biochemist. Um, and I worked for a long time in the pharmaceutical industry, um, but decided I'd had enough of that. And I went to sign up for evening classes one day. And the very first stand that I came to, it was alphabetical. So the first stand was archaeology. And I didn't get past that stand and I signed up. Um, and I started doing evening classes in archaeology. And I absolutely loved it. It's
Wow.
it's such an amazing subject. And after a while, I decided I was going to make it full time. So I gave up working and I went back to university and did a master's degree in archaeology. And that's when I discovered rock art. I hadn't heard about rock art, and I was looking for something to study that was easy for me to get to because I didn't have a big budget, and I was quite keen to do something in the north of England because that's where I grew up, actually in the county of Cumbria, where the Lake District is, the English Lake District.
Oh,
So I read around and I discovered this amazing thing called rock art or
well,
cup and ring marks.
yeah. Sorry, will you explain that
I
for the
will, of
people
course,
listening? Yeah.
yes. Um, Well, they're prehistoric. So they date from, well, dating them is actually very difficult, but we think they date from about 4000 BC through to about 1500 BC, really. Um, but it's very, as I say, it's very difficult to date it. And they're marks made on stone surfaces, um, quite often just rocks out in the landscape, boulders and outcrops. Um, and in the north of Britain, they tend to be circular. So we have little dints that we call cut marks. So a little hemispherical depression pecked into the rock surface. And sometimes they have a ring around the cup. So that makes a cup and ring. And you can imagine there's all sorts of variations on those. So you might get lots of cut marks. You might get grooves around the rings and tails and all sorts of spirals, and the variation of different combinations is incredible. So no two sites that I've seen are exactly the same.
Where would you get information about where to come? Would people actually call you, or how did you find, or how has the area been engaged with field work there?
Well, it's interesting because for a long time, archaeologists and professional archaeologists, academic archaeologists, really weren't interested in these things because they tend to be, because it's very difficult to date them and to understand them, they tended to be searched by amateurs. And I use that term very loosely because a lot of these people are extremely knowledgeable, especially about their own local landscape. So a lot of the resources that we have been put together by local people, going out, finding these sites, drawing them, photographing them, and then publishing originally little pamphlets, but more recently larger books. And I'll give you an example. The most amazing man called Stan Beckensaw, who is now in his 90s. He began recording rock art in Britain when he retired. He was a school teacher, and he had no archaeological training. But he has produced the most amazing recordings of these panels and published them. And a couple of years ago, for his 90th birthday, we did a book as a tribute to him and an exhibition. So we had 90 photographs of rock art to celebrate his 90 years. So it's thanks to a lot of people like that in different parts of Britain that we have the record that we do have. More
I'd just
recently,
like to ask about, were there
yeah.
common themes? Like, did he notice in all of his years common themes of symbols or different symbols that stood out?
Um, there have been some analyses of where certain symbols appear, but really no, there are some that are more rare. For example, spirals are quite rare.
Oh,
But no, it's very difficult
oh,
to find
excuse me,
patterns.
but you say they're rare. Like what jumped into my mind was the Hill of Tara and all the spirals there. So do
Yes.
you mean they're rare in like it's that a rarity then,
Well,
Tara?
that's one particular type of this cup and ring style of art that is known as passage grave art. And that flourished at a particular time in Ireland when those monuments were being built. And that's a very, very specific style of art that is a little bit different to the type of cup and ring marks that we find just dotted around the landscape.
Well, what would you think of the cup and ring marks? Like, is it something that, kids would do, or is there a message to you from these cup and ring marks or
Well, that's what everybody wants to know. What does
okay.
it mean? And the honest answer is that we really don't know what it means. In fact, one researcher, another amateur, published a list of 104 possible explanations for cup and
Oh,
ring marks, and he gave each one a score out of 10.
well, that's
So
cool.
they varied from um, maps. So some people think they might represent maps. Some people think they might represent fertility symbols. There's, as I say, 104 possible meanings. Um, I think personally, they mark special places in the landscape.
Oh,
But I don't think they have a specific meaning. We can't translate them as if it was language.
okay.
Um, they're, I don't think they were done by children. But what we don't know is whether they were done by groups of people or by one person. We don't know whether they were built up over a long period of time or whether they were done in one episode. For example, if there are 100 cup marks on a rock, were they done one every year or were they all done at the same time?
In the
So
middle of a cold winter, maybe.
exactly. So there's so many unanswered questions, which is, I think, what makes it fascinating for me.
What about digital imaging and 3D technology nowadays?
Mhm.
Has that helped you at all, or do
It's
you use it?
helped massively. Yeah.
Oh,
I think if you can imagine trying to record something that is a 3D shape using paper. I mean, the old method used to be to use wax rubbing and paper
oh, yeah,
and just put your paper on top of the rock and then rub to create an
yeah.
image. But that makes it very difficult when it's a curved surface. So now we have these wonderful techniques of imaging. Photogrammetry is the most recent one, which allows us to create a 3D model based on, and now it's very quick. It used to, when I first started doing it, it used to be quite laborious because you had to take overlapping pictures and then stitch it all together on the computer, and it took quite a lot of computer processing. But now you can basically just walk around taking pictures randomly, and the computer does it all for us and stitches it together, creates the model. And what's amazing about that is that you can change the way the light shines
Oh,
onto it, so you can move the light around
Okay.
and see which motifs, we call them motifs, the cups and rings, the marks, which light up when the sun, the imaginary sun, the
Yes.
digital sun, shines at different angles. So that provided a really fascinating insight into these things that suggests that maybe they were placed deliberately so that the sun would light them up.
At certain times. What we have here today with us, everybody, Dr. Kate Sharpe from Scotland. She's an expert on rock art there, and that's what we're speaking about right now. And in particular, I was wondering too about you talk about the different areas that you've been working. So in your book, we are talking about her book right now, then, A Song in Stone. Can you tell us a little bit about A Song in Stone, like if it's about one particular region or
Well, it is based on Scottish rock art, and the book itself came out of a project called Scotland's Rock Art Project. That was, or SCRAP for short. Um, and that was actually a follow-on project to a project I worked on previously in England. So the idea behind these projects was to create an amazing resource about rock art. And to do that with the help of a lot of volunteers. So what we did was recruited people locally and trained them up to go out and record the rock art in their areas. And then we put all that together on a big database that we could then search. So the book, A Song in Stone, was part of the Scottish end of that project. And just brought together a lot of the ideas that we've been thinking about. Lots of different ideas about how rock art can be interpreted, how we go about recording it. And it's designed for schools. It's the idea is that it's a resource for schools, because rock art is the sort of subject that crosses over subject areas, school subjects. So there's bits of history, there's bits of geography, there's lots of art involved, obviously, and it's ideal for getting children to think in different ways about things. We've done projects with local schools, art projects, English projects. They've written wonderful stories and poems about the rock art, because you really have to use your imagination to think what it might mean, what people were doing, making all these marks. So it's a
that's
great
fantastic.
subject.
And that brings me to like things about excavations, like at Tarbat, the Pictish excavations and things like that. Like, have do you go that far north or farther or in Scotland or and
Um,
is there rock art around there? It's a
the,
different time
the,
periods or
the most northerly I've been involved in digging was at Orkney,
oh,
in the
Orkney.
island. Yeah, there. Yes, at the Ness of Brodgar,
Wow.
which is an incredible site on the island there. And that's a different type of rock art again. That's one of the Neolithic villages on Orkney called Skara Brae has produced an incredible amount of rock art that tends to be geometric patterns,
Wow.
a bit like the Irish passage tombs. Um, and the same with where I was digging, we had these very finely engraved, rather than the pecked cups and rings, they seem to have engraved very fine lines that we used to call them butterflies, because they were sort of two triangles joined together like butterfly wings. And they're very, very difficult to see. You have to have the light just right. And those seem to have been inside houses, built into walls. So we really don't understand what's going on there.
Why did any of your studies take you like to the cosmos? Because a lot of the indigenous traditions, they see, something from the cosmos in the rock arts. So,
Absolutely. Yes. And I think connecting the rock art with the sun, the stars, and the moon indeed. There's been a lot of research about that. My own research over in Cumbria, in the northwest of England, involved a site called Copt Howe, which is slightly unusual because it's a huge boulder, and the vertical face of it is decorated, but not with cup and ring marks, with motifs very similar to those passage graves, with
Oh,
spirals and the chevrons and the geometrical patterns. And it stands in the middle of a valley, um, looking up towards. If you look up the valley, there's some mountains called the Langdale Pikes. And these mountains are very famous for being site of stone quarries in prehistory. So Neolithic people travelled into the mountains, quarried stone, and they made beautiful stone axes, which they then exported all around Britain. So hundreds of thousands of these axes were made and taken all over Britain. So what I noticed was that from the rock art site, looking up towards the mountains, on the solstice, so the middle of summer, when the sun stands still, the sun actually set right on the top of the mountain where the quarries were.
that's fascinating.
So I think there's no doubt that there was something going on there, that people knew that, and that there's a connection between that rock and those quarries right at the top of the mountains.
That's so interesting. And when you were speaking about Skara Brae, I remember reading somewhere that Captain James Cook, there's a dinner setting or something that he actually was there in his travels. Did you notice or did you hear about that?
No, no,
Oh,
I don't know anything about that. Sorry.
yeah, no, it doesn't matter. I just
No,
thought
it's
that was
quite possible though.
interesting.
Yeah,
But that's why I thought with his navigation too, to end up there where there was that village before, and
yeah,
and then it was covered over for years, and
it
then
was. Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of interesting. So that's the same as the rock art, like you're finding out about the past through things that have been covered up or mysteriously put there, maybe.
Yes, a lot of it is still to be uncovered. And I think that's the exciting thing as well, is that people are finding it still all the time. But we must have lost so much. I
Mhm.
think we're finding it in the uplands, where there hasn't been an awful lot of building, or roads being built. So I think possibly in the past we've lost an awful lot that's been quarried away, just moved, to make way for houses, for towns. So what we're finding is just a very small percentage of what there might have been at one time. I think the thing that when people ask me what I enjoy about rock art, I think I always come back to the fact that I can sit on one of these outcrops and I can sit, I know I'm sitting exactly where somebody sat in prehistory. I can run my fingers round the marks that they made and imagine that they were doing it. And I'm sitting looking at quite often a very similar view to what they've been looking at. I think the fact that we know that somebody actually sat there and
Mhm.
made these patterns, and you can connect with them a little bit.
Well, that's
And
what
I just love that feeling.
it's beautiful. And that's what going back into our history is that connecting with the ancestors,
Yeah.
something that if we all do, we'll all realize that we're all interconnected as humans too. So that's part of what this show is all about and uplifting and inspiring people.
Hmm.
And so here you are, you went in from a completely different background in
Hmm.
your 30s to starting to do something you love. So that's very
Yeah.
inspiring too, Dr. Sharp. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't looked back once.
That's fantastic. And that would, I'm sure that people here would be inspired to hear that it doesn't matter if you're just getting out of high school, you can also go back and learn about what you love to learn about, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Follow your dreams.
Follow
Yeah.
your dream and dream big.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So is there something that you'd like to, we should wrap up in the next couple of minutes, but is there something
Okay.
you'd like to leave with today? about your book, especially like even where people can get in touch if they would like to know?
Um, the book is available to download for free online. I'm sure you have the website if you
Yes.
want to publicize that.
So if you put in Kate Sharpe's name, that's all I
You
did.
can put in my name. Yeah,
It's Sharp with an E.
yes, and you'll find my if you put in Durham University, you'll find my page on the Durham University website, and everything is there to
And
download.
rock art. Yeah.
Yeah, that and the other book that I mentioned that we did dedicated to Stan Beckinsale is there for free download as well. So
Okay. I'm glad you
that
mentioned
should
that because I haven't seen those yet, the images that you've put
yeah.
together for him.
Well, the images aren't there, but the book is there for download.
Oh,
So
oh,
the
okay.
book includes a lot of the images as illustrations. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's fantastic. And so, oh, are you affiliated too? Like, are the museums, do they house different, like, are there any museums that you think is like that's the best rock art museum in the UK or?
Well, not really. There's not a lot of rock art in museums.
Oh,
No.
or they leave it
Yes,
in
it's
place?
best to see it in place.
Yeah.
Yes, most of it is probably too big to be lifted and taken into a museum. There are some, but probably the best place to see it is in Kilmartin, which is in Argyll and Bute, which is a
Oh,
hot spot for rock art in Scotland.
oh, well, there you go. That's
That's a
fantastic.
wonderful
No.
place to go, and they have a fantastic, very new museum actually. I was there this year to see the new exhibition, and yes, I certainly recommend Kilmartin.
Okay,
Yeah,
and when you were speaking about the Ring of Bradgar earlier, that's something I remember reading it back in the Roman times. It was marked on the Roman maps, the Ring of Bradgar, which is
the ring
interesting. Yeah.
itself, yeah, the stone circle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so
amazing
much for
place.
joining us today.
My
So,
pleasure.
yeah, it was fantastic. That's Dr. Kate Sharpe from the UK as an expert on rock art. Thanks you for listening to Merry Moments at 92.7 FM with Dr. Kate Sharpe from the UK. So we'll have you back again when we can and hearing about A Song in Stone, which is a free download if you go to Kate Sharpe at Durham University in the UK. Okay? So thanks
Fantastic.
so much. Okay, bye
Thank you.
everyone.